Here are the objectives of the lecture. Please read carefully. You need to know the different kind of arches, longitudinal and transverse, to assess the bone that construct this arch and recognize the factors that maintain the arch. First, we look to the function of the foot. The foot is to support the body and to propel you forwards during walking and running, as you see. And to keep this, the foot is built to be able to spread the stress of standing and moving and be pliable. Pliable means malleable, to accommodate the uneven and sloping surface, as you see the foot standing on these rocks. The skeleton of the foot, as you know, is formed of the bone of the hind foot, which is the talus, and underneath is the calcaneus. And in front of them, the rest of the tarsal bone, the navicular, then the three cuneiform, medial, intermediate, and lateral, and the lateral cuboid. This 7 bone comprised tarsal bone. Again, talus, calcaneus, navicular, medial cuneiform, intermediate, lateral cuneiform, and cuboid. Then the 5 metatarsal, and we start counting from the medial one. First metatarsal, second, third, fourth, and fifth. Then the bone of the digits, which are the phalanges, we have for the big toe 2 phalanges, and then for the lateral 4 toes 3 phalanges, proximal, middle, and distal. From these bones, the bone touching the floor, which are the weight-bearing points of the foot, are the large head of the first metatarsal and the second metatarsal bone. They comprise the large area here, and the head of the third, fourth, and fifth metatarsal, and on the back there is the tuberosity of the calcaneus. In between the two, the foot does not reach the ground, so these are the weight-bearing points. Why is that? It's because the skeleton of the foot is built up describing arch. These are the weight-bearing points in the front, and here is the weight-bearing points in the back, the tuberosity of the calcaneus. And these arches of the foot is what we are going to describe now. Arches of the foot are classified into 3 arches: medial, longitudinal, lateral longitudinal, and transverse arch of the foot. The longitudinal arch of the foot, which presents from the anterior points to the posterior points on the medial and the lateral side of the foot, is described as having 3 parts: anterior pillar, posterior pillar, and the top is the keystone, which is the one on the top here. The highest point of the arch is called the keystone. For the medial longitudinal arch, we need to know these 3 parts, which are the anterior pillar, formed of the navicular, the 3 cuneiform, the first 3 metatarsal bone, posterior pillar, which is made of the calcaneus here, and the keystone is formed of the talus. This is the highest point of the arch. For the lateral longitudinal arch, which is present here, marked by the purple, we have the anterior pillar formed of the fourth and the fifth metatarsal bone. The posterior pillar is still the calcaneus, but then the keystone is the cuboid. Notice here the relation between the talus and cuboid. The talus, which is the keystone for the medial longitudinal arch, and this is the cuboid keystone for the lateral longitudinal arch. Here is the lateral longitudinal arch. So if we look to the two arches, the medial and the lateral, we notice that the medial longitudinal arch is higher than the lateral longitudinal arch. Again, why? Because the keystone for the medial is the talus, while the lateral longitudinal arch, its keystone is the cuboid, which is much lower than the talus. Medial and lateral longitudinal arch under the effect of the body weights when the person is heavy. The lateral longitudinal arch is the first one of the two arches that touch the ground under the weights of the person. It gets to contact the ground, transmitted the body weight to the ground. Here is the lateral longitudinal arch, where the medial longitudinal arch doesn't touch. For the transverse arch, which runs from the side to side, it is formed of proximal row and distal. The proximal row is made of the tarsal bone, which is the 4C. 4C means medial cuneiform, intermedial cuneiform, lateral cuneiform, and then the cuboid. These are the 4C row of the transverse arch. The distal row is formed of the heads of the metatarsal bones. This arch is not a complete arch. Why? Because this side of the foot, which is the medial, is elevated from the ground. So it is, if we make a line from these points to the lateral side, we feel like it's half an arch. How we can make this arch complete is by connecting the two transverse arch of the two foots. This will make the two, this half arch and this half arch will make both as one complete arch. They touch the ground on this side, and in the middle it is the highest point. The factors that maintains the arches of the foot are three factors. A bony factor, which is the shape of the bone of the foot. Feel like the bone of the foot are shaped as to accommodate each other with these surfaces. The second is the ligaments of the foot, and we have ligaments of the foot that connect the individual bones of the foot, and they make up like staples that connects adjacent bone of the foot, like this diagrams show. The third is the tone of the muscles of the foot, and we have muscles passing in the foot that pass from the most posterior to the most anterior in both lateral and in the medial and lateral side, and they act like a tie beam. When they have few shoes having what we call الرباط اللي بيربط الشوز بتاعتك، تربط الناحية اليمين بالناحية الشمال وبتقعد، فبتربط الشوز اللي هي المفتوحة فبتضايقها. This way the tendon they pass on the medial side, then on the lateral side to make as a tie beam connecting the bone on the back with the bone on the front. Also, there are tendons that you will go on later. These tendons elevate the middle part of the foot and raise it up like a suspension bridge. You feel like this part, this tendon is responsible for keeping the keystone higher, and this is more applicable for the transverse arch. Now we are going to know the name of the ligament of the foot which support this arch. If we go with the diagram, we have ligaments on the medial and ligaments on the lateral to support the medial and lateral longitudinal arch of the foot. On the medial side, we have this important ligament, which is the plantar calcaneonavicular ligament, and we call it the spring ligament. On the lateral side, we have two ligaments, long plantar and short plantar ligament, deep to it. So these are the three ligaments that connect the foot and support the arch. If we go for the long and short plantar ligaments, the short plantar ligaments extend from the anterior tubercle of calcaneus to the plantar surface of cuboid, from calcaneus to cuboid, while the long plantar extend more posteriorly to tuberosity of calcaneus, just anterior to it, and then anteriorly it spreads to attach to cuboids and to the base of the metatarsal bone by its most anterior parts. So the short plantar from calcaneus to cuboid, C to C. The long plantar is from cuboids to the metatarsal, and it gives the deep slip to cuboid. So both ligaments support the lateral side, which is the lateral longitudinal arch. The plantar calcaneonavicular ligament, which is called the spring ligament, is important for the medial side. This ligament extends from the sustentaculum tali, which is a tuberosity extending from the calcaneus here, and it supports the head of the talus. This is a sustentaculum tali, and here is the attachment of the spring ligament. It extends anteriorly to be attached to the navicular bone. And this ligament is like زي السوستة، هو شايل الهيد بتاعت الكالكينيس بتاعت التيلس فوق، فعشان كده بيسموه the spring ligament، زي السوستة بالظبط. البريشر بتاع التيلس ينزل عليه ويرجع هو يرده تاني فوق. It is a very strong ligament and it supports the medial arch of the foot. The other ligaments that support the arches of the foot is the plantar aponeus, which is part of the deep fascia of the sole of the foot, and it is thickened to form this band. It is attached posteriorly to the medial tubercle of calcaneus. Anteriorly, it is split into 5 slips, one for each toe. On each side, here on the medial and this on the lateral, it is attached to the metatarsal bone by the medial and the lateral intermuscular septum. And this connects the most posterior to the most anterior parts of the whole foot, so it supports the two arches. When we talk about the thigh beam, which is the tendon that crosses under the sole of the foot from posterior to anterior, we have a tendon of a muscle called flexor, hallucis, longus. If we call flexor because it is causing flexion, hallucis because it is going to the big toe, and longus because there is another short one called flexor hallucis brevis. So it is a long one extended from the back of the leg, then it crosses underneath the sustentaculum tali, supported by the spring ligaments. So it is another factor here to support the longitudinal, medial longitudinal. Then it crosses the medial side of the foot down to the bottom or the inferior surface of the distal phalanx of the big toe. The suspension bridge اللي هو الكوبري المعلق بتاعنا means that something will cross underneath the foot to elevate its middle part up زي الكوبري المعلق كده في حبال بترفعه فوق. And here we have two tendons for that. The peroneus longus tendon, which extend from the lateral side across the bottom of the foot or the sole of the foot from lateral to medial, meeting the tendon of the tibialis anterior muscle, crossing the medial side of the sole of the foot here, and they meet at the medial part of the foot at the medial cuneiform and the first metatarsal. The two tendons, they elevate the middle parts of the sole of the foot high up. And if we look to this figure, it's like the stirrup اللي بيستخدموا الجوكي علشان يحط رجله فيها وهو بيركب الحصان، فبيسموها the stirrup tendon. Finally, we finish with the function of the arch of the foot, which distributes the body weight to all weight-bearing points. Again, it acts as a spring to easily propelling. Shock absorber, if you step، لو حافظت على رجلك على الأرض عمرك ما بتلمس الجراوند كلها لأنها بتلمس بالبوينتس اللي هي touching الفلور، والماليابيليتي of the arches of the foot بتخليها زي السوستة تفرد وتتني تاني ترجع لفوق. Protection of the important structure